to build a legacy on your own terms. Hi, I'm Tanya Hendrix, and this is Legacy Her Way, the podcast where we explore how women are creating powerful personal legacies through family, faith, business, community, and beyond. From foster moms to founders, creatives to caregivers, we go beyond the buzzwords and talk about real life, real impact, and the values that guide it all. Whether you're building wealth, raising kids, or launching your next big thing, this space is for you. Now, this episode is sponsored by Huntsville Estate Planning Lawyer, LLC, where we empower your vision and secure your future through estate planning and trademarks. So let's talk legacy, her way, your way, the way that matters most. Today's guest is someone whose journey embodies exactly all of that. Kate Bartley is a physical therapist and certified master transformational life and health coach with 25 years of experience helping women overcome limitations and step into their full potential. She is a cancer survivor and women's health advocate, passionate about empowering purpose-driven women who are striving to balance their ambitions with personal responsibilities. I can't wait to dig into that one. I'm incredibly excited, though, to announce that she is a published author of the Good Girl RX. Or are you wanting it? Is it prescription or you want it the RX?
You can say either. Good Girl prescription, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I
say both. Yeah.
Good Girl prescription, breaking free from good girl syndrome to heal your body, transform your relationships, and up-level your confidence. Her story is powerful, personal, and full of wisdom. So let's dive right in. Welcome to the show, Kate. I'm excited to have you here with me today.
Thank you, Tanya. Thank you for inviting me.
Absolutely. And I will just say at the date that we're recording this is actually the official launch date of the book, isn't it?
It is. It is.
Well, I am honored that you chose to spend a few minutes with me today on this extremely exciting and important day for you. So I know you've got a lot in the works.
Yeah, I thought, what better way to celebrate than to connect with a friend and talk about it?
Yes, yes. So I want the audience to know a little bit about you. So before we kind of really dive into the book and how you got to the book and writing the book, I want the audience to hear a little bit about you. So tell us a little bit about your personal information, your biographical information, so we can understand your journey to writing this book and your success as a life and health coach.
Okay, sure. Yeah. So I grew up in Kansas City, Missouri, moved to Huntsville when I was right before I got married, right after college. I was the third girl in my family. So I kind of learned from my sister's mistakes and became, don't do that, like that doesn't work so well, And so I think I kind of became the, what some people would refer to as the golden child, the one excelling in academics and sports and, getting scholarships, things like that my sisters maybe not so much. And so that kind of was my childhood. And then I started a family in Huntsville and was a physical therapist, worked in all kinds of areas in physical therapy, everywhere from rehab to pediatrics, and loved that work. Absolutely loved what I did. Couldn't believe I got paid for it. But also very involved in ministry in the church, children's ministry, women's ministry, those kind of things. And then what led me to write the book was, I was also a homeschool mom during all of that too. So I was juggling a lot of things. And, I was practicing boundaries and learning, okay, I need to back off and be at home more. And so I was working part-time. But once you throw ministry into that, you're really not working part-time anymore, So
Wow.
I really wasn't. I was doing unpaid work in the church, plus my job, plus homeschool and all of that stuff. So I guess what led me to write the book is kind of I hit a breaking point with all of that. Went through burnout in the church. We had planted a church, and I had been serving in the children's, developing the whole program, curriculum, all the stuff in a small church plant, and probably sat in the worship service maybe 5 times in 7 years.
Oh, wow.
And so I was beyond burned out, and it took thyroid cancer for me to give myself permission to step back. And so it was just, I learned a lot through that experience. That's when I started writing, kind of like I had this boundary around me. I was in kind of this quarantine of you can't be around your kids because you have radioactive iodine in your body. And it was like, oh, what do I do? Like, God doesn't need me to do anything. So what am I going to like? And it just like birthed this permission slip to rest and not have to do anything for God, and to begin to really tap back into my desires. And that's where writing was born, I think. And then just fast forward years later, I kind of got into the same habit, started having health issues again, lots of symptoms and cancer scare again and all that stuff. And so really it was my process of flipping from a medical professional to a patient and learning firsthand on the other side of the journey what was going on in my life, the silent stressors, the things like that took a toll on me. And then my work with women, I shifted out of the clinic and into coaching, and what I saw firsthand in women's lives that were just weren't being talked about in the medical profession, just things that, lack of boundaries and an ability to say yes to themselves and an ability to communicate and express themselves and taking on too much and just all of that stuff that was affecting their well-being. So that's really what led to writing this book.
Okay, wonderful. And I know you touched on ministry, and I know that was there's some problems there that you touched on, and I just want to be clear, we're not going to be church bashing or anything like that today. There's just some things that you had to heal from, and there'll be some discussions about that. But for any listeners, don't think, oh no, here goes another church bashing episode. That's not what this is about. These are just some real experiences from people who are still very much involved in the faith. And so just kind of give that little disclaimer out there so nobody.
Yeah. And I hope I had to work really hard to make sure that wasn't presented that way in the book as well, that I'm taking personal responsibility for my inability to advocate for my needs and set my own boundaries.
And that is really a substance of the book, is we do need to set our own boundaries. We do need to speak up for ourselves. And that is getting into your legacy, which we're going to talk about here in a minute.
Yeah.
So when I first met you, and just for the audience, I've known Kate for a number of years now. So when we first met, you were just beginning that journey to being a life and a health coach. And you were also talking about eventually writing a book. So you had, even back then, you had some very clear ambitions of what you wanted to do. How did you balance those ambitions with your personal responsibilities? You've already talked about you had children. I know you're married. So how did you balance all that out?
I really think I had to go through that health crisis to get to a place where I was able to set clear enough boundaries to prioritize those things in my life. So I was having to let go of a lot of things that I was taking on as responsibility that really weren't aligned with what was most important to me. And as you can see, I struggled with that in the past. So balancing that, I think it was, I had to be okay with working less and making less money and letting go of the guilt and the shame around that. I had to do a lot of investing in that new business, right? So that was taking everything I was earning was going into investing in building and creating this business and the training that I needed. So I was spending a lot of money as I was building this thing. And so I think the way that I had to balance that is I had to let myself lean into a place of trust and permission and get rid of the guilt and the shame that was telling me this wasn't okay, that I needed to just go get a real job and, a steady income and, all of that stuff. So I had to do a lot of inner work around all of the stuff that was coming up that allowed to prioritize those things.
Mm-hmm.
And in the process, I feel like my boundaries with my family as priority alongside that really were better than they ever had been. I think, again, on the other side of that health journey, I would never wanted to go back to burnout again. I was not, so I probably had more rigid boundaries around those things. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you talk about this in the book, and I know I've taken a few quotes from it, and we'll talk about these quotes. And I think a couple of quotes that are from the book that really come to mind when you were just talking was, you wrote that when we've been taught to be selfless, prioritizing our own needs doesn't feel doable. So we're, and I think, and well, let me just finish this quote. So you say, when we've been taught to be selfless, prioritizing our own needs doesn't feel doable. Goodness, while often seen as virtuous, can perpetuate a cycle of stress and exhaustion when we forget to include ourselves on the list of people to be good to.
Yeah.
Where does that come from? Is that part of, we don't put ourselves first? We don't prioritize ourselves because we're trying to be the good girl. We're trying to be the good wife, the good mom, and doing all the things, and the good Christian, and doing all things expected of us to our own detriment.
Yeah, I think, as we're talking about legacy, I think, unfortunately, it is a legacy that has been passed down to us. Maybe not such a healthy one it's so internalized. It's so cultural. It's not, this isn't even just in the church. I talk to women every day that don't even have a faith background, and they have this stuff too. And it's just, we just associate the self-sacrifice and self-abandonment with being a loving person. And so it causes a really strong internal war. Like you say, we always think about aligning our goals with our values. Well, if we don't value ourselves, that's going to be really hard, because if we're always aligning with our values and we don't value ourselves, we're never going to prioritize our own needs. We're never going to create space for ourselves. We value in this country, in this culture, hard work, strong women, right? People that produce and are fruitful and effective and doing things in the world and making a difference, whether that's in the family or in our businesses. So if we're not doing that, and we're using our time in a different way that doesn't align with what we've been taught, what is stored in our body as right and wrong, there's going to be huge internal conflict around that. And that's why I say boundaries start with inside. We cannot set boundaries in our lives, in our time, in our schedules, until we do the work to deal with the shame and the guilt that of those internal value system that's been passed on to us, really.
How difficult was it to confront that legacy that you were given, and now pivot to leave a different legacy? Because I know you personally, so I know you have 2 daughters. I know you have a granddaughter. How difficult was that to say, y'all gave me this legacy, whether it's family, society, kind of a lot that was wrapped into that legacy that was given to you.
Yeah.
How difficult was it to say, nope, I'm not going to have that legacy anymore. I'm going to pivot, and I'm going to leave a better legacy for my daughters and granddaughter?
Yeah. I think there was always there's a part of me that was saying exactly that, right? Like, nope, I saw the harm that it did to my family. I saw the harm that it did to me. I saw okay, well, I can live like this, but I may not be here much longer to even pass on a legacy to my grandchildren. They may never know me, right? Like, so when you hit that end point in that crisis, it starts to untangle that stuff. There's just a natural, organic untangling. Richard Rohr speaks to order, disorder, reorder, and I was in a major disorder. And so it created a natural process of untangling from some of that stuff. Does that make sense? Where I think a lot of us, we don't quite get there. And so we still hold on tight to it because it's still working for us, right? But then I think on the other side of that is I could do that, and I could live into that new legacy and create a different model, a healthier model for my children and my grandchildren, until things started bumping up against that. Like, during this book writing process, I was, all of a sudden I'm not able to focus on clients or marketing my business as much. I've really invested a lot in this book writing process. And so all it took was for me to hear my husband call me back to look at budget and talk about budget, or my daughter to go, hey, why can't we afford this? And why can't I do this? And I'm the only child now. Why can't we? And that stuff would just spiral inside of me, just like take me out, anxiety and shame spirals and all of that. And so it is, in order to shift that into something new, we have to be able to sit in the tension of all the crap that comes up that tells you should feel guilty, you should feel bad, you should be doing more, you should be out there, you need to give this up and quit telling other women to do this. You need to get out there and get off your butt and work harder. And so it's not easy, I guess, if that's to answer your question.
Well, and I was actually going to follow up with, did you get some pushback? Because from all sides. And you just talked about your husband, you talked about your daughter, and that's not, people may not consider that pushback. For you internally, that kind of is pushback.
Because they're important to me.
Exactly.
Right?
The most important.
Yeah.
And so how did you, because I really want women listening to this to understand some of the practical aspects of, I'm going to receive pushback. I'm going to have some issues. How did you deal with that? How did you say, I hear you, I understand you? How did you do that?
Yeah. Well, I have to step away and do my own work first and get myself into a place where I'm regulated enough to have that conversation with them, or it's not pretty, right? And even my husband has been supportive this whole time. He was just being practical, right? He's not telling me not. He's the one that encourages this and full support. But I'm reading something that he's saying or a tone of voice, and it's, my biases are like, oh, that means he's not happy with this, or,
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so I had to do a lot of hours of my own inner work, the same work I do with clients, where I do a lot of somatic work now, where I work with my body and what's happening within my body, where I can really notice, is this coming from love or fear? Is this anxiety in my body, or is this expansion in my body? And if it's anxiety, I've learned to pause and not act out of that place, because you don't know how many times I got on the computer and started researching PT jobs, and I was just going to, like, the anxiety said, you better go do something, go get a job. Mm-hmm. And I would start to fill out the application, and I would pause and go, hang on a second. This is coming from a place of scarcity. This is coming from a place of fear. This is anxiety in the driver's seat. And I don't want to make choices from that place anymore, because I've done it a lot in my past. Mm-hmm. And so just stopping and working with my body and helping that anxiety move through me, and waiting until I could bring in cues of safety to my body, going outside, looking at the birds, listening to my wind chimes, whatever I needed to help my body feel safe enough to be where it was without having to take action to get away from what I was feeling. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So a lot of work with that, a lot of journaling, a lot of, working on self-leadership, working with the parts of myself that were afraid, in bringing in the voice of love to tell me what was true, and so I had to do that, and then lots of communication, but I was trying to get better at not trying to prove what I was doing or defend what I was doing, but maybe just being open and transparent more with my husband with what was going on inside of me. So, and sometimes they're going to support you and say the right things to help, and sometimes they're still in their stuff and they can't, right? They're not reflecting what you need. And so I had to bring in other people too, spiritual director and different things that I needed to mirror love to me, and truth to me. So I don't know if that answers your question. Let's just say, this book represents a whole lot more than getting a book done. It represents a lot of internal work and transformation for myself in the process.
Yeah, and I think it also represents you keeping your boundaries, even in the midst of all the pushback and the fear and the scarcity. You're setting your boundaries, like, this is my goal, this is what I'm doing, and you're finding a way to do it, which I think is extremely important for people to understand that, yes, you're going to have some pushback from those who love you the most.
Yeah. But, and the thing that I want to add to that you can see on the other side of this is, and this is what breaks me, like, on the other side of this, my husband and my daughter are my biggest supporters now. And, mm-hmm. and when my husband watched me walk through what I did, that's when he started championing. Like, he's very protective of my boundaries too. Like, we're going to figure it out. We're going to cut our finances. We're going to do what we need to do. And that's the thing my daughter didn't understand as a teenage girl is, yeah, mom can go back to work full time and she can do all this, but I wasn't really emotionally available for you back then. Like, I'm not willing to go back there. Like, and there's something to that I speak to in the book. When I hit that place of completely spent and all my symptoms, there's a lot of grieving of that I didn't have the boundaries to say no to everything else so that I could be emotionally present for her. Mm-hmm. And so it isn't selfish. I'm actually trying to be my healthiest self for her. And that might not look like what she wants because she doesn't understand it. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense? But it has transformed our relationship in the process.
Nice.
Like, where I am with her today is so very different from where I was when she was 14. Nice. And if I hadn't been saying yes to this and putting up boundaries around this and saying no to the other stuff, I think it could have gone a very different way.
And what a legacy that is for her to see the different mom, the different mom from when she was to see. How old is she now? 17? Now, she may not appreciate it until she's a little bit older.
Yeah.
But that's quite a legacy that you have left for her, that it's okay to say no to some things. It's okay and there's going to be sacrifices to be made in order to maintain boundaries, in order to maintain your own emotional self and well-being.
Yeah. And I think that is, when I think about the legacy I want to leave for my daughters and my granddaughters, that's it. Like, to redefine what it means to be a strong woman, to redefine that completely and flip it on its head, so that we are getting out from under that, what we have modeled to them with very unrealistic expectations, where there is no time, there is no bandwidth to process your own emotions or to sit with what's coming up for you so that you can do your own healing work. Because we bring and we carry our wounds from childhood into our motherhood and our adulthood, into our careers, and if we don't realize that we're projecting our past onto our future and we don't take time to do that healing work, it passes on the legacy we don't want to pass on. We're passing on our trauma to our children.
So how would you define being a strong woman? How do you define that for your daughters and your granddaughter now?
So it's interesting you asked that. There was a question that when you sent some questions, it was like, who do I see as the one that passed on a healthier legacy to me? And I would say it was my grandmother on my dad's side. And I think she's been a pretty good model of what I want to model. And there are a few things that I might take away, like a little bit too much self-sufficiency. But she just had this beautiful blend of strength and just like a quiet strength, but a strong, like she was serving the people in her church, and she was making Sunday dinners for us, but she wasn't over giving, and she had plenty of time to take care of herself. And she walked in a place where she was valuing herself. And it was really different from what I saw in my mom and other women. And I think, I've always tried to emulate her. I have learned, the one thing that needed to be different that probably hurt me a little bit was I almost looked to her a little too much, because she was very strong and self-sufficient. I never wanted to be the person that was whiny or needy or clingy, or I wanted to be like my grandmother. And I had to do a lot of what I call shadow work also, though, to integrate back in. It's okay to have needs. It's okay to ask for help. It's okay to delegate. Like, I can be all those things and also be open-hearted to bringing in other people to support me. So anyway, I don't know if that answered your question. I think I got off track.
No, actually, it does, because you look back and you saw the good qualities in grandmother, but you saw some problems there, because our traditional definition of a strong woman is not what you were saying is a strong woman should be, because that's what you've been modeled. That's what we've been modeled as a society. Yeah. And you're wanting to build and create a different legacy for your daughters. And so, and what,
if it's okay to share, like, what I'm noticing different. I actually interviewed my oldest daughter before I wrote the book. I didn't get to put it in the book because my development letter was like, that's too much. That's another book. But anyway, I did interview her to ask her kind of these questions, like, what is the things that you want to hold on to that we've passed down, and what are you doing differently or want differently for your daughter? And it was just a beautiful, sacred moment for us to grieve over some things, but also celebrate what she was doing differently. And one of them was, like, she has this habit of emotional repression that got passed on to her, right? Like, she really struggles with her friends, even her teammates, in being honest and open about what's going on inside of her. And so she's trying to do that differently with her daughter, instead of, like, giving her daughter permission to feel what she's feeling and validate what she's feeling. And she sits with her and they breathe together, and she gets triggered by it because, she was taught and she learned it's not okay to scream and cry, right? Wipe put some dirt on it and suck it up, and all of that stuff. And so she's just learning how to do that for herself alongside her daughter.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's really, really different from what we were taught.
And you brought up, and I think it's in is it the very first chapter where you talk about, you're at your daughter's house and you overheard your granddaughter just saying, no, no, no. Tell me about that.
So that was really, I love those moments because it was like, oh my gosh, I got to write about that. But I was just sitting in a room. I was laying down in my bed in the room next to hers. And I think she was maybe, how old was she? Under 2, maybe 15 months. I can't remember, maybe even younger. But she was in her bed. And I'd woken up in the morning. I didn't even know what was going on. I just heard these no's, right? No, 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 no. And I was like, what is going on? Who's in her room and what's happening? And I was just curious about the context. And then I realized later as I walked in, she just had books in her bed. And she was just like, no, I don't want that one. No, I don't want that one. And then it was just such a beautiful analogy of how easily it was for her to just say what she wanted and what she didn't want. Mm-hmm. Without worrying about whether somebody was going to agree with her choice or it was okay to say it or not say it. And I was like, oh my gosh, if we could all go back to that, right? Mm-hmm. Where we're just so clear on our preferences and our desires and our needs, and it isn't hinged on whether it's going to put somebody out or, please someone else or all of that stuff. So, yeah.
Well, it gets to the point of your book and what we talked about today. It's saying no to other things so we can say yes to ourselves.
And yes to those things, like when I first said yes to blogging, right? That yes was such a clear, but it was so buried. Like I didn't even know it was there until I had space to feel it and be reminded, And so those yeses, those are the calls that like the things that we're just curious and excited to explore. And we want to, like a child, like mm-hmm. It's just this childlike faith of, oh yes, I want to do that. Right. But those desires and those yeses get so buried underneath the expected yeses. We can't even discern them sometimes. Mm-hmm. And so it takes space for us to for those dreams to arise in us again. So, but it's a really cool full circle moment for me to see what honoring those yeses does in our life. Mm-hmm. Like, gosh.
Well, and that's part of, as you've made your pivot from being the good girl, from saying yes to others and no to yourself, you're seeing that pivot take shape in the life of your granddaughter now. So you've seen it, your daughter's doing a better job at saying no to things based on some things y'all have had discussions about, and now your granddaughter. So you've got that legacy started. But what does legacy her way mean to you?
I like when you say her way, because I think, one of the things that I'm still working on this myself, and it's something that's really important for my clients, is we have to get back in touch with our intuition. We have to learn to tune back into ourselves and find out what that is for us, right? And it's so challenging. Even when you first sent me those questions, I was like, what is my legacy? Is it this? Am I wanting to make a difference in healthcare? Like, I was like still in this, like I was disconnected when I was answering the questions, and I was all over the place. Mm-hmm. And I think so many of us go around in that place. Does that make sense? There's no clarity. Mm-hmm. And so we have to tune back in and wait, what is going on in here? What is expansive to me? What is constrictive to me? And So legacy her way is like really in tune with what's most important to us, what brings us alive, what matters, right? Mm-hmm. I don't know if does that answer your question?
Yeah. And we're getting short on time, but I do have one other question before we talk a little bit more about your book. What is one thing, and you've got a whole book, but what is one thing that you're doing now that you wish more women knew they could do?
To create space for that. To be able to step courageously into communicating what that is. And most people know if you give them space, they can get there. But to actually create space for it and to say start saying more no's, permission to live a lighter life, permission to live in a way that's not stressing them out and overwhelming them and shutting them down. And to start seeing that as the greatest gift that they can give and pass on to their children, to the people around them. I just want them to believe that that's possible. It takes a lot of work. There's going to be resistance. There's going to be backlash, but gosh, is it worth it?
Yes.
It's worth it.
Wonderful word. Wonderful word. Well, you have a book out called The Good Girl RX, or Good Girl Prescription, published by Hope Books. Tell us where we can find your book.
So it should be available wherever books are sold now. Grab it on Amazon. I've got a book page on my website, katebartley.com, where you can grab it there as well. Just type in The Good Girl RX Kate Bartley and you're going to find it.
And I can say that it is on Amazon. I got mine. Got my Kindle version on Amazon, so it is there. And I encourage you, as the audience, to reach out to Kate. Tell us a little bit about, I know we mentioned the book, but you're also a life and health coach. How can people, if people want to reach out to you for those services, how do they reach out to you?
Yeah, if you'll just go to my website, katebartley.com, I think any page you land on, you're going to be able to get to a place where there's a 30-minute free discovery call where you can just hop on, connect with me, ask your questions. There's also a services page where you can see some of the different things that I do, what my services are, and kind of check that out and see if the copy resonates with you and if it feels like the direction. And that's where you start honoring your yes, right? Like, let go of the resistance, let go of all the things that say you don't have time or you can't do this or what is it going to cost, and you just honor the first yes. The first yes is, this resonates, this lands for me, then hit that button and we can talk. We'll find possibility for you.
Very good. And I encourage you listeners to reach out to Kate. She is phenomenal. Even just have a chat with her. Just have that 30-minute discovery call. But also be sure you buy your copy of The Good Girl RX, available wherever you buy your books, Amazon, other places. So I want to thank you so much, Kate, for being with me today. And I want to thank all of you for listening to Legacy Her Way. If today's conversation inspired you, moved you, or made you think differently about what legacy means, you're not alone. I mean, listen to Kate's story. It's very inspirational. She is carving out her own path, carving out her own legacy. And so you are not alone if you have been inspired today. Be sure to follow the show so you never miss an episode. And if you are feeling generous, leave a review to help more women find inspiration for their own path to legacy. Until next time, keep building boldly, loving deeply, and living your legacy her way. Thank you all very much.